Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's training industry webinar sponsored by class 3 Strategies for Successful Virtual Upskilling and Reskilling. I'm Sarah Gallo, an editor at Training Industry. Happy you could all join us for today's event. We'll be getting started in just a minute, but first I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items with you all. Of course, we hope you will be interactive throughout today's event. Feel free to use the chat, post your comments in there, and then you can also put your questions into your Q&A window, which we will address during the Q&A portion of the event. We also encourage you to share the information you receive today with your network on social media. Make sure to follow the hashtag TIWebinars and the Twitter handle We Are Class to share your information with your network. You'll also notice that a brief survey is popped open in your browser after today's event. As always, we love hearing your feedback about today's content, speaker, anything else that you would like to share with us. All right, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker of the day, Chris Olson. Chris Olson is a corporate learning and development consultant at Class. He brings over 20 years of experience of organizational effectiveness to his role. Primarily operating in the finance industry, Chris oversaw learning and development, performance, employee experience, and engagement. He's led 10 national bank merger and acquisition change management initiatives by leveraging technology that focused on experience and modern learning practices. He delivered skills and talent when organizations needed it most. Before joining Class, Chris was also supporting one of the top HR research and consulting firms, Red Thread Research. All right, with that, without any further ado, Chris, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you much, Sarah. And thank you everyone for joining today. This is awesome. I love the scope and stretch of this network. So cheers to the training industry for bringing people from all over the globe. It's just amazing. I love seeing tech being able to bring this about. So couldn't be happier to be here to connect with everyone. And hopefully you connect with me afterwards. Love to stay in touch with everybody. So yeah, so I'm gonna dive right in here because we've got a hot topic, I like to think anyways. So I'm gonna share my screen as I take over and get all the control. We will go ahead and begin our presentation. So, all right, so the topic, skilling and upskilling and reskilling online. So we're gonna tackle 3 different strategies that we're gonna kind of cover here. Now, they're strategies, they're high level, so we're not gonna solve the world's problems today. Maybe we will, I don't know, I hope we can, but we're really gonna keep these like a little bit loose for you to be able to take and make it applicable in your own organization, because I don't believe there's a cookie cutter solution to this. I think the market's trying to figure that out right now, and it's really fun and exciting to see to do that. But the fun thing is everyone knows that it's a thing to solve for, and the research will go through a lot of that to kind of give examples of the resounding agreement around that. So our agenda here, what we're going to kind of talk through, we kind of go in through a brief introduction already, so I'm not going to bore you with that. Sarah did a great job of giving all the buzzwords thrown in my bio there, so I appreciate that. But we'll really focus on the industry trends, what's happening in the market, what the landscape looks like today, and then kind of address some of the concerns that we're seeing, and then kind of talk through some of the changes and evolutions that's probably going to come about. And so we'll focus on 3 strategies thereafter to really kind of like, again, high level for you to kind of focus on something that could be more applicable in your organization. And we've got the end there for questions, but as Sarah alluded to earlier, please feel free to submit some questions throughout. I'm happy to work on the fly and kind of give like whatever 2 cents I can offer for anything spontaneous you have to throw in there. And so we'll have a few other polls that will kind of sprinkle within, I think a couple at least, just to kind of keep things interesting, because for my own curiosity from the network that we're going to have on today, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts as well too. So ran over myself here a little bit with Sarah already, but basically my role here at Class is to help support the strategy and kind of form those partnerships with the other great organizations and players in the L&D space. And so that's kind of my role. But now to the fun stuff. What's corporate learning look like today when we're trying to do skilling virtually. So often what we've got is everyone's talking about in person, and that's like the best. That's kind of, it's traditional, it's what we know, and it's what we like, and there is a lot of great benefits to that. Is it the best? I think it's debatable, to be honest, but that's what everyone kind of, you know, has that notion. And so, but it's not perfect, and I think everyone would at least admit that. So there's pros and cons. So there's the obvious benefits. It's very interactive, very rich with context. You can have greater impact within the human connection, and you can form peer connections, so you build out your network. That happens a lot, especially in the onboarding space. Like, people feel like they want to gather in person versus digital, because they feel like that's kind of the idea that they'll get more connected, right? And so then, but it's not perfect in the sense where it's not scalable. It's really difficult. It's expensive. It's hard to pivot. Just think of the challenging challenges you have when you have to reschedule something, and all of a sudden something's canceled. You got to communicate that out, make sure everyone knows about that. Okay, adjust your plane tickets, adjust your travel schedules, you know, the venues where it's going to be held, the physical location. So much goes into that, right? So there's good and bad when it comes with that. And so a lot has shifted to the web conference side, where you take tools like we're on today, like Zoom, or you got your Teams or your WebEx, whatever. But those are the web conference tools designed for meetings. And so there's some benefits to that, and you know, you kind of almost were forced into it a little bit, right, with having to move things from not being in person. And so with that, there was great advantages, I think, that were discovered. So the fact that it's scalable, it's very accessible to everyone. You can meet people where they're at, and you can have automation involved, like tracking attendance, and you get insights and data that's captured instead of just someone trying to memorize the room and everything that happened. And so there's some give and take with there. But the drawbacks as well are, you know, engagement is hard to keep up. It's easy to be distracted with you know, things happening around you at home and whatnot. And then you have limitations on how you can deliver content, and the ability for having practice interactivity and feedback and sessions and things like that. So that's where we came about. We wanted to solve for those problems. And so that's where we try to bring the best of both worlds into our platform of class. That's kind of how we were born. And so we're going to focus not so much on our technology, but more kind of on the thought leadership around it. But this is just to kind of give at least the ground setting of kind of what we are here for and what we're set out to do. So the importance of skills. I mentioned it's a hot topic, but it's not just me that's saying that. That's really the market. So we're seeing a lot of companies view this as a cost center and competitive advantage for this, being able to have a market differentiator. From those, there's obviously the term war on talent that gets kind of alluded to quite a lot in our space. L&D programs, they're kind of designed to permeate through the employee life cycle. We'll kind of give a play-by-play of how that works. But the idea is that the skilling and upskilling is really key to keeping your employees retained, giving you career development and opportunities within your organization to solve for the skill gaps that you have. But it's really going to be a complete differentiator. And there's clearly going to be a cost if you don't invest in skills. So that's kind of like, you know, the thing that we're going to try to prevent and try to help support to kind of get everybody kind of pre-active on this. So why are skills so critical? I've mentioned before, it's interwoven throughout the life cycle of the employee. So pretty much all of your HR practices and L&D practices are going to be kind of designed to have a component of skills involved in every little aspect, whether it's trying to attract and retain new talent by offering the opportunities that you provide for career development and for giving them added value into their skill sets and what they can provide, motivating and engaging the employees to keep them going and look at other future opportunities for that. Building your employee brand to like actually say like, yeah, we're taking a stance is important to us, and then like we're behind it, like we believe in it that much. And that ties right into your culture for value-based culture to show like this is how much we believe in it, that we actually make it interwoven not only in the employee life cycle, but also in the operations of our organization. And then developing those people capabilities is the key thing to all of those different areas in that life cycle. So we're going to go through a couple of numbers here, just statistics that we kind of find personally interesting here at class, and we think that it's going to kind of resonate with those that are on the call, the virtual call today, where we have the different methods and how we're delivering training right now today. So this is a graph that's provided by Statistia that provides global statistics and analysis around this. And so of the different modes of training that we provide today that applies to skills is also going to be the breaking down the prevalency of how much we're leveraging online to no online. So everything to the left in that light gray, that means no online. Everything to the right of that shaded gray, anything with the colors from orange, yellow, light blue to lapis, I believe is the color code for that, is that everything to the right of that is going to be at least online or some form of online. So it's going to be a blended learning approach. So you can see it's getting pretty strong here with the need for online. So we're having to shift in how we deliver these and do it effectively in an engaging way now that in person is kind of like shifting. And so being at a transformational moment here as we're making the shift, we've got some research here provided by LinkedIn Learning's work report and workplace report, as well as Kineo. And so we're going to have some statistics, and it's going to start, okay, yeah, pretty obvious, but then it's going to get into like, ooh, that stings a little. And so some of the research we have is that, one, very obvious, 94% of employees really would value their career development. And so if an organization provides that, they're more likely to stay and be invested and more involved and probably higher productivity, higher engaged. 94%, that's pretty dang high. That's pretty across the board, right? So, however, though, negative 25 NPS score is what the average L&D department is getting within organizations. So not too hot. 85% of employees struggle to find the needed training, and we're going to get into dollar amounts associated with that as well too. 81% of executives list talent as the top priority. Like that is the thing that we need to focus on is talent. And then even skilling. So even the specific skills, we'll talk about that later as well too. However, though, big bummer, we've got 2 out of 3 of those that are in talent development that don't even recommend their own programs today. And so, there's probably a lot mixed into that, whether it's limited resources, not getting the investment, whether it's, just burnout in general. But either way, that is a bad statistic. 2 out of 3 wouldn't even recommend what the work that they are doing. And so, like, what are we doing, guys? Like, this is the key component of what we're supposed to do is get people motivated, encouraged, and inspired by the programs we provide to help their career. So some kind of staggering statistics here, I think, at the very end as we look at it in whole and scope. So we'll address in some ways that we can hopefully bring some inspiration and a little bit of strategy to help support that. Okay, but what are the skills? What are the ones that are in demand? There's people that are saying what the skills are. There's probably different interests in what the skills are. And I think in the last couple of years, we've kind of realized that we're reassessing kind of what those important skills are. And so according to Harvard Education, they did a little bit of research and they kind of identified the top 5 main skills that they really see are going to be prevalent today. Technology, computer skills, digital literacy, competencies around the virtual digitalization of the landscape that we're in now, working knowledge of tech-enabled tools and techniques, robot automation, programming. But the one that I kind of believe is going to kind of continue to creep up because it's very tech focused up at the top right, but critical thinking is going to be something that you can't replicate in any of those avenues. So you're going to find that's going to be a unique thing that's going to set you apart in your skill sets today. So just want to call attention to that, and looks like we've got some chats. So great. Yep. Thanks for the feedback on the interesting stats there. So real quick, I'd just love to throw a poll out, Sarah, if you're able to trigger this, where I'd love to hear any skills that you're particularly focusing on within your organizations. So we're going to start off with these 5, but if it's other, I would just kind of like to see kind of the discrepancy to see how aligned, what Harvard is recommending compared to what we're doing today. So if you're able to launch that poll, Sarah, that'd be amazing. And we'll continue with the presentation here as we move along. We're able to, I don't see anything in mind, Sarah, just thought I'd check in with you, just make sure that's happening. There we go. Awesome. Oh, I think it was there and then it went away. There we go.
All right, everybody, you should see that poll up there on your screen. So take a minute, pop your answer into that poll.
If you're seeing my screen, let's see. Oh, it doesn't allow me to vote, so I'm reclused from that. So all right, I'll look forward to seeing the responses here.
All right. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. There's your results.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Interesting. That's like an even spread. So maybe Harvard is onto something here. Technology and skills being at the top, digital literacy, little in looks like 4th place. And then we've got critical thinking up there, other, which is probably a mix of everything else. But interesting. Robot and automation. I thought that might be on the lower end. I think that's going to begin to creep up more as the need arises more for that. But we're going to talk about that specifically and how there's a little bit of a fear around that as well. There's a bit of a stigma when that comes up, but we'll get into that in a minute. So excellent. Thanks everyone for taking the time. Very interesting. All right, we'll dive back in here. So now we're getting into 3 strategies for virtual talent development here. And so a couple of things that we believe that we think you should start off with here is build a bridge between the skills and competencies. So those that are developed at the individual level, as well as how they can be supported in the organization. So being able to kind of show and give intention and purpose around what those are, employee development for those that value that's added at the individual level, to how that is interpreted and translated into career mobility, internal mobility, for them to actually move up within the organization or just, wherever that their career is defined, and where it should go to. And then performance management. So you could even say performance enablement as well, the 2 combined. So the idea that we are providing you with what is you're going to need to be successful. And so this is kind of the tie-in to that. And that success is going to benefit the organization. So it's really win-win all around when you focus on this and bring that in together. But it really takes the ability to kind of combine those and give the intentionality around it. So something that's like very incredibly difficult right now is trying to define what do we mean by skills and competencies, because they're kind of 2 different things and they get mentioned a lot, even so much that competencies, with all the buzzwords and jargon that happens in our industry, that actually turns into behaviors at times. And so the 2 different kind of are how they're viewed separately, like what are those definitions, because there's a lot going on here. So because of my past history with Red Thread, I know that their work is incredibly detailed and very, very involved. And so with all that, they took a stab at actually trying to provide a little bit of a framework around what is a skill and what is a competency. Now we're going to probably focus more on the skill side, but really they're kind of both there intertwined, but the differences between them that is not always like perfect textbook, but these are some general guidelines to kind of look at, just to have some level setting of those. So we have there's a great infographic that gives us more in depth, but these are going to be the high level things that you can kind of take away to kind of understand the difference between the 2 of those. So as we look at the skills, I think the real key is around applicability, because often what we see is we're pushing for skills that we think are important, or it's what we've done. And so we don't know how to adjust to that. But what we're hearing from people, what we're hearing from learners is that we need to know like what we need to know to actually be successful in our job and what we're doing, and ultimately in life, like how to file taxes, right? So those are some of the things that we need to help and support, because according to Harvard Business Review, there's north of 350 billion. It's actually 359 billion. So there's just another 9 billion into that number, where globally training programs are not deemed as effective. And so with that being the spend on the amount of money, only 12% are saying that it's actually effective and is helping them in their job. So there's north of $300 billion just going out there. It's going into other people's hands, but it's not having the desired effect that everyone expects it to have. That's a pretty staggering statistic to be able to do that. Like, we should focus and make that applicable, because that money's just like, it's going out to nowhere. People are profiting off the ability to not provide skills actually to employees. So it's just this kind of placebo effect that is clearly not resonating and not helping. So there's a lot of fear around skills when it comes to automation as well. So by 2020, there is reports that we will have lost about 40 million jobs at that point in time. And now it's just going to continue to grow. And so that's the big fear, that automation is going to kill jobs. But what people aren't looking is on the flip side of it, that it's going to create more than it takes away. And so it's really just reshaping and redesigning like what that is. So what we should do, I think, as talent development leaders, is focus on those skills that are going to help promote and not be lost to automation. And by supporting that, that is, you'll hopefully will find and instill and inspire others to realize that they don't have to do those mundane tasks anymore. Now they can move on to more valuable and rewarding jobs and hopefully get more engagement and productivity out of them by kind of instilling them with that. I'd rather have drones water the vineyard and be able to drink the wine and focus on how to refine that than have to do all the grunt work. So that's just kind of me, but I think that's the advantages that we're trying to get at here, is trying to address the fear that comes along with automation when it applies to skills. The other thing too that we have to think about is what we're conditioned and programmed to believe is that what we're doing today is just what you have to do because it's the thing. But I think we really need to think of how automation plays a role into this, because what we're seeing is that some of the skills that we're teaching, they're going to become irrelevant from the automation that will come forward. So it's not that again, we should not train those different things. I think it's just making a pivot to address and focus on the skills that are going to be important and it's going to have longevity. So Matthew Daniel, who's with Guild Education, he's a principal over there to help bridge the gap between education and corporations. He's got a fabulous article that he did where he addresses the difference between durable skills and perishable skills. And so the idea is just to shift from the perishable to the durable and start making those investments is kind of the concept there. And some of those that are the most durable are going to be the human skills, the soft skills. And so for that, the problem is that it's very difficult to provide those because some of them are innate and some of them have to be built like a muscle. And so it's not something you can check the box that, hey, I'm certified in this. It's something that is going to be something that's continually needs to be mastered. And so Mr. Adam Grant, who's pretty popular these days, making the rounds in the speaking circuits, he has something very succinct around this where he kind of draws that correlation to say, hey, soft skills ain't easy. They're actually the hardest things to master. And so what he's saying is that behavioral, social, emotional skills, those are going to be things that make humans stand out, and that it's going to kind of be, I don't want to say future proof, but it's going to be more future ready and more prepared for those durable skills. So focusing on those is going to be kind of your key component. IBM just did a study recently where they said that the willingness to be flexible and adaptable to change is the most critical skill. So it went up from being the fourth skill in, what was that, 2016? Sorry, I'm assuming, yeah, 2016, to being the top one in 2019. And I can only imagine like today that that's gone up even higher. And so the thing I would throw in around this, what we're going to see a lot more is that the adaptable part, that is going to be very key, because the ability to change and adapt and adjust is going to be so pronounced that there's talk of moving from what we had for IQ for the intelligence quotient to now that there's the EQ for emotional quotient for emotional intelligence. Now we're getting to the point where there's AQ. What is the ability and scale, and for us to be able to tell how much you're able to pivot and adjust on a dime and pick up things quickly. And so that is going to become so valuable that it's increasingly to become one of the top skills that we have today. All right, so now we're going to get into our second strategy. And so I guess maybe what we do is we take a quick break. I saw some chats coming in. I just want to check and see if there's anything that we're hearing, Sarah, from the crowd in the Q&A section.
Sure, yeah. Going back to some of those skills, it looks like there's a lot about equity, diversity, and inclusion, sensitivity, critical thinking, customer service skills. It's like those are a lot of things that people are writing in right now.
Excellent. Yeah, I could not agree more with DEIB. And so that's diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I think belonging is going to be something you're going to see that's going to come out a lot more and interwoven with D&I. And I'm actually attending a conference here from with a company called Opal. And so what they've done is they've actually blended L&D and D&I together for their conferences now, because there's so much benefit from those kind of supporting each other. And so I'm not surprised to see D&I up there. That's great to see and hear. Excellent. And I think I see something in Q&A. And will the deck be shared? Yes, we will share the deck afterwards. And so you'll have the references of all the content and research we're sharing. And so I think there will be a recording as well, but I'll let Sarah speak to that. All right, so next is getting into strategy around tools and what we can do to support skills. So really a lot of it is determining what the tools are going to be most used by the employee. Really what we're saying is like, what are the tools that they're using today? And can you can you work with those? Can you get involved in those and provide learning and development and skilling opportunities within there? Even if it's just something light and simple to reinforce what they've learned virtually in something like class or something in their asynchronous LMS components, right? And so the thing with that, one thing I'll throw on that, I think you're seeing a lot of tech tools that are going to start like easing their way into that. For instance, there's an organization called Arist. It's like Aristotle, like the prefix of the word Aristotle. They're doing really kind of interesting work where they're not trying to tackle the whole thing. They just want to pick this part where it's going to be a light, easy entrance way to support and provide learning where they're at. So they actually provide full-on courses that are SMS text-based, and now they're integrating into Slack and Teams. And I think they're eventually going to get into email. So basically, like, courses are now going to literally be in the tools that you're using today. So I think those are the things that I wouldn't, I don't want to say it has to be Arist, but I think take a look at those tools to think about what are your employees using today and where can you reach them? Because usually everyone's paying attention to their text messages. So it's kind of an ingenious way to kind of look at that as approach for how they can provide skilling and development opportunities there. Now, the other thing is don't forget about human interactions, of course, in your use of technology, because that's one of the key focuses for class, is that really the peer-to-peer connections and the group learning activities, like that is going to be so pronounced. So the ability to collaborate, there's a big focus on us for our breakout rooms, and they're really unique in how we do that, because the point of that is that that's where a lot of the magic happens, is people learning from each other. So I think what you're going to see is that less of this kind of one to mass, where it's going to be more of something where you're going to see actual practice and people learning from each other in the moment. And so I think that those are kind of two key areas that I will look at. Focus on your employee life cycle for where they're at to find and meet them there. And then additionally, you're going to want to focus on your human interactions and how you can create those. I know there's a lot of debate around virtual, hybrid, and I will talk around that. Actually, that's going to be our third component, how we get, the disbelievers kind of on board. There's a lot of skeptics around how that actually works, because everyone's just kind of used to knowing, the virtual, the in-person space. So for me, for what I see, it's been a lot more around that it's kind of just change management, to be honest. It's like the shifting and pivoting of this. And so it's moving into things that are unknown. So I think as things come about and more tech offerings come out that support and that are light and easy, we'll see some traction there. So the real thing though is you gotta care about your end user. You have to listen to the employees of where they're at, what they're doing, what is their life like. Walk a mile in their shoes. Because oftentimes we're designing programs and we're creating learning opportunities, and then the tech we deliver it on is just not meeting them where they're at, or it's a jarring experience. And so just trying to throw a little levity in here, because I do think there is some truth to this, where we put a lot of effort and thought and care into how we created the content that we built as instructional designers. And then when we deliver it to people to practice and to engage with and to leverage, the tech can play a role and really kind of disrupt that. And so we have to think of the environments of how that they can actually get the ability to practice and not be so transactional, and try to take the human element into consideration. So that's me, but Josh Burson puts it a lot more succinctly, who everyone kind of knows, probably this gentleman, he's a little bit of a household name these days, but he says of the the learning delivery technologies, they're not really focused on collaboration, right? And so I think that it feels like that way when we're in web conference tools, but there's a missing component for people to actually interact together in unison. And so that's kind of what we're trying to address and solve for. So if you look for solutions that deliver a learning experience that does practice, application, collaboration, discussion, and content creation, you're going to have a winning ticket there. All right, looks like we've got some chats. Just want to check in there. Q&A window. Okay. All right, and so just to kind of understand in a little bit more levity here, thinking of where people are at, I think oftentimes we figure out that we think we understand the environment and what everybody has, but then you run into occasions where, like my good friend Adam, who I love to publicly embarrass as much as possible, he's a very intelligent guy. He works for General Motors, where he actually helps design the interior of your automobiles to be more human factored, to be able to have more intuitiveness in there and to simplify that experience. So that's kind of what he actually does, which is really fun and interesting. However, the technology got the better of him, and what happened is he had his webcam turned on unexpectedly. It was like the default, and he wasn't prepared for that. So the point of this, to say that, hey, why was he on the web during a web meeting without his shirt on? Because the missing context in this scenario when he shared this on Facebook was that he had 95 hot, humid degree weather, and so his AC unit was out, and he was working from home, and so he's just trying to deal with the discomfort of being in sweltering heat within his home, trying to attend to get work done. And so, but having, at first glance, people might like misconstrue what happened there, but it's really just trying to struggle with with where he was at and the environments he's in. And so I think when we think about that, we have to think about the humans involved in this and where they're at. So there's a lot of talk around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, what are the internet bandwidth constrictions that they might have? What are the different time zones that people are in for the different geographies that they're in? And so if we're providing career opportunities, it might not be so easy for some to attend. So what I suggest and recommend here is just think of some of the very basic human-centered design elements here to kind of think of and consider within your learning and development programs that you have. So starting with something as simple as engaging yourself to understand the workflow of your employees' life cycles and what their day-to-day is like, walk a mile in their shoes, understand and find out where, hey, maybe what we're creating isn't meeting them when they need it. Seek feedback from them. So like, and actually we're gonna have a quick poll here. So I'm gonna keep rambling here if you don't mind, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind launching the additional poll here. Just curious to hear from everyone, if you have feedback mechanisms within your learning programs, we're actually listening to them, to those that are going through your learners. So I'll go ahead and let you keep on, everyone kind of make their selection there as I focus back on the topic here. So seeking feedback, I think, is essential to improve. Now, the thing I would preface this and prepare everyone for is that you have to be prepared for critical feedback. And so it's not always going to be perfect, and that's a great thing. Like, the feedback is a canary in a coal mine for you to actually refine the program you have and to make it better and take it to the next level. So you have to keep your ego in check and just be open to the places where it doesn't matter if you put a lot of work into it, you have to think of the end user and what their experience is like. So when that happens, you might need to actually involve them into the process. And so I think what you'll find is the 12% that are saying, hey, we're great, we got skills according to Harvard Business Review. You have 80 plus that are like, hey, it's not cutting the mustard, we need to do something here. Cool, like, tell us where we're missing the mark. Like, please, like, let's solve this together. And so I think that's where I love to see kind of the camaraderie and the connection and everything kind of shaped based off of the feedback of others that are going through your programs as you roll them out. So if it's right, Sarah, I think for those that hopefully have had a chance, we'll give it another 5 seconds here to fill in, and we'll kind of display the results. I'm just kind of curious how many have feedback programs.
All right, let's find out. There we go.
Look at that. Okay, this is great. And thank you for those that are honest with the 10% that say we don't, and the 14% that we don't. So we got about almost 25% that still need to work on like getting that feedback. And so oftentimes we have surveys and evaluations afterwards. The more you can do those, the better, in a very light, easy way to kind of like pinpoint everything within the process. So it might start off with like, after a full-on program, what did you like, didn't like about that? Try to get it in the moment as much as you can is my suggestion and recommendation within that. So that's great to see a lot of people on the great mark, and Godspeed to the 24% working on it. All right. And so just to kind of wrap up with some of this around the strategy and tools, focus on your strategy. What is going to be the key things that you're trying to accomplish, and how can you do that and do it with those methods of bringing the learners into the process? And when you build out your learning ecosystem, how can you find areas where you can work into their workflow and their daily lives? And then third, creating flexible content that can be delivered in that flow of work, right? So whatever the opportunities are, I would encourage you to explore that. Kind of try to take a little experiments if you can. I highly recommend doing like small pilot programs. So Usually, if you have a leadership development program that you're rolling out where it's kind of a select few, or maybe an internship program, something like that, where you can start and experiment with that, see the successes you can have there, and begin to expand that out based off of your evolutions and how you're kind of leveraging to really focus on experience. Okay, now third here, this is the third strategy. And so I guess maybe I should take a break here for Q&A. Do we have anything, Sarah, that has come in, or are we good to go there?
I think we are all caught up for now.
Excellent. Okay. So for our last strategy here, focusing on setting clear expectations for learners and managers, or leaders and managers. The real key reason around this is there's a big cultural component in skills and in making sure that it's paramount and that it's being expressed at the top. There's a lot of focus that often happens where you focus on deadlines and quarterly results and things like that, but involving and ingratiating the leaders to kind of be involved and partake and really kind of share the gospel of skills and is going to kind of bode very well for you. So enabling the team leads to understand how and access and how they can get to coaching opportunities, get to being able to measure skills, getting to insights so they can be involved. That is going to be a great service to you. It's kind of, if there's a way that you can provide, whether it's in your LMS or your LXP, or you can work with your people analytics team in your organizations, if you're lucky enough to have those data scientists, those people are much smarter than me, that can help kind of bridge that gap for you to give insights direct to the managers to help them understand how to address the skill gaps that they might face and how they can kind of bring those up in the organization. That's going to be great. So those are some of the things that I think are going to be kind of helping to support to the managers to kind of give them the keys and the tools to be able to support what you're doing to make your job a lot easier. So a big key component of that is being intentional. So telling learners up front what kind of the learning climate is going to be like and what they're trying to achieve, basically giving them the why. So, Simon Sinek, the author of, Start with Why, that's really going to be a key thing to help get the learners involved and to make that direct correlation to what they're doing and what they're learning and why it's going to have an effect for them and their career and for the long run of the organization. So oftentimes what I've seen is for, like, say, compliance. I have a big background in finance and banking. With that, there is a lot of compliance training. It is not sexy content. It is very boring and dry, but it is very necessary and important. And so stressing the importance of why they need to learn that is going to be all the better reason for them to complete it and complete it on time, which we all know we hate having to crack the whip to make sure it's done by a certain due date. And so, but of course, that's what regulations deem. And so high engagement is going to be the key to that. You'll find more success where they'll complete it quicker and they'll get higher results when you show why they're completing the training in the first place. And then helping individuals find autonomy in the skills and coach to competency. So there's a lot involved in that, but I think the autonomy for them to be able to find the things that they want to actually learn versus, hey, this is an edict passed from up on high that you have to do this. I think if you're able to bring them in to find ways that they can be a little bit empowered to find that where their interests lie and tie those to career development, because the current role that they're in might be the entry point to getting to where they want to go. And the key for that is going to be the managers having those conversations to find out where do they want to go, and therefore what opportunities can I provide them. And it's something very simple where it doesn't need to be technology. It can be just, hey, I really want to go this way in my career. And so what kind of work as you as a manager can you get them involved in projects for them to get that experience and get some of that under their belts and their resume. And so having them to be able to find different opportunities that are not so strict and not so rigid in the structure and open up your structure to allow for that, I think is going to bode well for leaders and managers to be able to kind of help support, and you'll get more higher engagement as a result because you're giving things that they personally find valuable that's going to help them get to wherever they want to in their career and get there faster. So those are, I'm kind of talking a lot for around these, but these are pretty important kind of bullet points as I think for the involvement in leaders and managers. And I think also there's areas where managers should actually remove themselves from the process. And us as L&D leaders, can find ways, hopefully, to systemically find ways that there's boundaries where managers cannot get in the way of career development opportunities, because that happens more often than not, unfortunately. And so let's first talk about culture, though, before we get too far down the reservation. So a couple of things that I want to talk about, I alluded to earlier, was just that there is a lot of kind of fear around just virtual and hybrid. And it's not like without merit. There is a lot of change that is happening, and there is a lot to adjust, and a lot of things specifically around like HR practices and policies. However, though, what everyone is actually saying when you actually realize and get the feedback from everyone is that they're finding that the remote work is actually seen as mostly positive. And so so much that 32% say it improved a lot, and 44% are saying it improved some. And so you have a few others that are like not a fan of it, and that's totally fine. We get that, because that's not everyone's the same. We're people, we're complex. We have different things, thoughts and feelings around how we approach different things. I mean, and less around demographics, around like, color, age, race, gender, things like that. I think that it's more around like introvert, extrovert. It's more on personalities of us as a human, and what our preferences are is how it's playing out in this space. And so I think when you've seen the shift to remote, you've seen employees' performance kind of thrive for those that were kind of more extroverted, and they're like just really killing performance and productivity. And you have those that had the drawback, where they kind of like snapped back, where they felt a little secluded and they fed off the energy of others. So, but really that balance you're going to see with flexibility and courage in your development and skilling programs. That's really what people are looking for. They want to blend of both typically. And so I think it's just going to take a little bit of while for us to adjust to that. But overwhelming, the research is really showing its positive change. And so rather than be concerned around it, I think that there's a lot of possibilities we should be excited about that we're going to get to that we haven't gotten to before, because we're breaking from convention. So some other key components around culture that's going to really help and support this is that in the same study that Gartner has provided, which is where that chart came from before, the other interesting things of note here is that 2.4 times more likely for higher engagement of your team members, 2.7 times more likely to report high discretionary effort and intent to stay, to retain those employees, 3.5 times for high inclusion for those employees that report their organization culture has deteriorated. So high inclusion, you're going to see that there's a lot more psychological safety that comes with the hybrid environments, and you're going to see a lot more comfort, a lot more inclusion that's going to take place, because you're on a little bit more of a level playing field right now, and you're not stuck with who's on what floor in the skyscraper, and who's in this office in this headquarters versus those that are in the more rural locations. It kind of helps level that playing field. And even, we had a lot of skeptics, I think, especially in the banking industry. There was a lot of those that were in the C-suite level that just fought off the virtual remote environments because they just thought things couldn't be done. Most notably, though, senior leaders in organizations were almost 2 times more likely to recommend and endorse the remote hybrid setup for more than individual contributors. So those that were the biggest skeptics now became the biggest advocates for this. And a couple things, I actually wanted to kind of break a little bit of tradition here. So we've got more that we're going to go through slide-wise, but some other things I just want to call out on the cultural component is that we have some research that I just came about, where I just saw, this was really recent, that came from PwC, where there's a big concern around career development and upskilling and reskilling and innovation in general within virtual hybrid environments. And so this big research and survey that they've done, where they connected with all these different leaders in large organizations. And so the key quote that I found in this is that they said, career development is more challenging when supervisor team members don't have the face-to-face connection and coaching collaboration opportunities. So upskilling and retraining are constrained. Innovation processes take longer because team members aren't co-located, and it's hard for them to bounce ideas off each other. So, I mean, maybe, so that's what a lot of them have said. And so, but what I find interesting is if you go to the source and you do see what the research actually says from those that are in those organizations and those that are the practitioners, if you hear from them, we're seeing in this article conducted by Scientific American, where that extensive research is showing that hybrid and remote teams gain innovation advantage and outcompete in-person teams by adopting best practices for innovations such as virtual brainstorming. So there's a lot of different things where I think there's what those that are saying, because it's change and it's what they know and they have to pivot and they don't understand it. But then when you get to the research of it, it's actually supporting that, no, this is a good thing. So in these cultural environments and how it's supporting the organization, you just might not be able to identify it easily because it's not what you know, but there's progress happening and it's a good thing. So we should be excited about that. So a couple key things I want to kind of get back to in our presentation just before we kind of get to some questions here is that some of the things that we need to get support from our leaders and managers is that, one, we need to make sure that they're going to dedicate time for learning. So it's always a catch-22. I wonder if there's some that can relate on this call where you'll see that around the catch-22 of, hey, we need training, we need learning and development. And so you spend all this time building this complex thing and you involve their SME experts in it, and you spend a lot of time getting the content, getting the buy-in, and then you try to roll it out. And then, oh, well, we don't have any time for that. We don't have time for the training, and then schedules get pushed back. And then you see, fractions of the attendees that you wanted to see, and then you find out why. And it's that, well, the manager said that, because of staffing, I had to, only I got to go, and then the other three couldn't come. And so there's a lot of those things where you need to get the manager buy-in for this to make sure that they are going to dedicate time in their staffing, and that the leaders at the C-suite level are supporting that, and that they'll make sure that it's paramount that they provide career development opportunities. Additionally, and also there's a lot of things interwoven in that I want to say as well too, to just because I'd be remiss, the D&I aspects of this, so that you basically it should be across the board. So there should not be limitations for not only dedicating the time, but just also the accessibility for everyone to get the career opportunities. It should not be limited to where they are at geographically. It should not be limited to where they're at in their role in the organization. I know we get very selective around that, but I think if you analyze and take a hard look at your leadership development programs that are probably well-intentioned in how you design them, they're probably riddled with bias in how you go through that nomination process. And so I would try to do your best to find ways to encourage and evaluate how managers are involved in the nomination process for those that get involved and invited to those opportunities for development. So just want to put that out there. But yeah, as I mentioned, seeking executive sponsorship is going to be a key component to that, because they're going to be the ones that endorse this, not only from the timing of it to make sure that it's a priority, but I think they should even adjust and address some of the workplace operations and how they're conducted. I think what we're going to see coming up, this is a little bit aspirational, but some of the things that we're beginning to see more of is around employee well-being. And I think there's a lot to that, whether it's something as there's meditation and things like that, and that's great. And there's a lot of like wellness webinars. But in order for these things to stick, you're going to have executives make hard leaders make hard decisions around do we adjust and do we push back project deadlines in order to try to address the burnout that we have, because they're getting the ramifications of the Great Resignation and those that are not finding value in their work and that are feeling burned out. And so I think employee well-being is going to be something that's going to really come out, and they have to take a hard look at everyone in their company as customers. Are we meeting the needs and providing the career development opportunities for that of a single Black mother? Like, what are the things that we need to think of and take in consideration for caretaking opportunities for those in the hybrid environment that might not have a caretaker or daycare? Things of those opportunities are actually going to be critical. I know these are very high level because we're talking about skills, but these are the actual environments that our employees are in that is affecting their abilities to get to their career development opportunities. And so those are the things I think that we need to put a little bit of pressure on executives, or help them kind of see the light of where we can go and provide the promise of what happens if they invest and they help to support to make sure you get 8 hours of sleep after you just went through a full day workshop of something very important that's critical. Like if it's very critical for the program that they just sat through, making sure you get 8 hours of sleep so you have the neuroplasticity for what you just learned to like sink into your brain cells, that's going to be the thing that we need to kind of work with them on. And it'll be incremental, but we should start having those conversations now just so that we can see some successes. So sharing pre and post work with employees and managers. Now, this is where it gets really key with managers, because what happens is that sometimes managers are not involved in the equation at all, and I don't recommend that. Managers should be involved to be able to support, to prepare, and to reinforce what they would have learned. And so their direct reports to help support their teams. And so involving them in that process so that the managers know how to support and engage and really make sure that they provide them the time to actually complete their work before they go to the session, so that they're well prepared and be an efficient process. I think those are the things that you're going to see. So very light, simple things that don't require tech, but it requires people and how they're going to be involved to help support when they go to their skilling opportunities in the virtual environment. And then the last thing is going to be around creating pathways for automation. So it's just very simple things like even with the tools that you're using today, whether it's G Suite or Outlook, what are the communication tools that we can push these out on a timed basis? Maybe it's that's where we can do a little bit of nudges, where we can help reinforce what they just learned in a digital manner through automation and in communicating that. What are the ways that you can get your feedback from everybody with timed survey tools based off of the time of when they left? I think you're going to see a lot of learning management systems where they're baking in things with even in their LMS systems, where you can flip a switch and have knowledge check questions that go out not during the asynchronous course that they just went through on the LMS, and not just through your live and virtual environment, but it's going to be follow-up afterwards that they'll push out to reinforce the training, similar to what Arist is doing, and to bring that in so that you have the data metrics to know how much they retained off of that. So there's lots of creative automation pathways where you'll find a lot more benefit, because the last thing you want to do is all that heart and soul you put into the content and the learning program to then have it come back and just not have life. You want to make sure that you're treating the experience here as a journey and versus an event. And so I think that's another key thing I would also try to reinforce with your executive sponsorship. So those are a couple high-level items that we wanted to tackle here with 3 ways that you can strategically and hopefully in a systematic way kind of support skilling for your organization in a virtual environment, some with tech, some without tech. So I'll leave it there, and I'll open it up for questions here and feedback.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. We do have time for some questions here. It looks like this one is from Manjunith, and he wants to know if you have any tips for aligning strategy to your intended learning outcomes.
Oh man, yeah. So there's a lot to that. A lot of it is basically the key component of that is defining what it is in the first place. What do you want that learning outcome to be? Sometimes you're dependent around what is the strategy that has been set at the organization level. So hopefully they've done that. So in your organizations, if they said, these are the things we're going to focus on for 2022. Okay, great. Let me partner with the high level leaders and find a way that I can consult with them to help to support what they're doing and achieve that. And so by aligning to the strategy of what that is, how can I work with them to find out what those skill gaps are? Usually what we've done is whenever that happens, when you have this big hoopla, the C-suite goes and they have this offsite for strategy and they talk about their big stuff and they got these grand plans, like how do you make that come to life? And so that's where, as soon as that is done, you find ways of where you think L&D is going to have the most impact and effect. And then you partner with those leaders to say, hey, we want on board with this. How can we consult to help deliver on this in a talent development way? And so I think what you're seeing now is more and more of the C-suite and senior leaders are becoming more open and understanding the importance of learning and development as they're seeing the what the cost of jobs are that they don't have, the talent skill gaps. Look at the airlines today. You have Southwest canceling flights, American Airlines canceling flights. They just don't have the pilots to be able to supply that. So how can we get more trained and skilled pilots? Nursing nurses within hospitals. There's nursing shortage like nationwide. And it's not for lack of people being accredited and being qualified for that. And it's just that there are not enough people training them to be able to create more certified nurses to be operating within hospitals and healthcare institutions. So I think connecting with those C-suite leaders to find out how you can work in a consultative way to find a shared vision of what success looks like, and then working towards that is going to be my key recommendation.
Perfect. Yeah, great tips to keep in mind. All right, we have time for maybe one more question. This one's from Aaron, who wants to know if there's any tools or technologies available that you have in mind to use for learner engagement during sessions, for example, such as he mentioned Kahoot and Mentimeter. Any other tools you would recommend?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that are out there. So like, I think what there's a lot that are out there. So I mean, there's Kahoot, there's Poll Everywhere, there's a lot of those third-party tools. I'm really impressed with what Arist is doing, and I know I mentioned them quite a bit, but I think because it's in a different space than what we think it is, and it's more where the employees and the learners are at. I think that's the real key. But when we're in the live environments, to be honest, we're actually looking at ways that we, instead of recreating the wheel, we have a whiteboard, and we find I think there's a lot of great success in whiteboard tools, but I think ways that you get people connected to work together is going to be the bigger key, because Mentimeter, for me, I see that as being more of a presentation tool, and Prezi has some kind of unique stuff around that too. So it can liven up your presentations, but when people are actually interacting and practicing, I think that's where you're going to see like whiteboard collaboration tools playing a bigger role in it. One of the things that makes us different in class is that we don't make it so you click on something and then you get taken out to go somewhere else. We don't make it so that you are constantly sharing your screen. The key thing that we did with us is that we made it so screen share is not important, actually. What we do is we bring in the tools that you're using, whatever they are, the Kahoot, the Poll Everywhere, even though we have polling built in that, if that's your preference, you can bring those tools in centrally within class and work with those in class in unison together and break those up within the breakout rooms. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but I kind of think like what we're doing is kind of maybe something you might be interested in, because we're kind of bringing in the tools you're using today, Asana, Trello, Monday.com, whatever your project management tool is, that you can use that as a collaboration tool, or even Salesforce, bring that in, and you can have coaching opportunities to look at the data together in group formats, and then break them off into breakout rooms so that they can work on those different things. I think that's going to be looking for anything that provides a human connection. Those are going to be the key components, and so that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Perfect, thanks. Awesome. Well, we are about at time for questions, but Chris, thank you so much for a great presentation with us.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to stay in touch with everyone. Thank you, Training Industry.
Thanks. Awesome. Well, everybody, at this point, I'd like to invite you to some other upcoming training industry webinars and demos this month. You can, of course, register for all of these now on trainingindustry.com/webinar for free. Again, all of our webinars and demos are pre-qualified for a credit hour by CPTM, SHRM, HRCI, and ISPI certifications. The Certified Professional in Training Management program assists you with the tools and skills you need to manage the future training needs of your organization. You can register for a virtual practicum now at trainingindustry.com/CPTM. And I do encourage you to register for our upcoming Training Industry Leader Talk happening on November 18th, the expanding role of the training function. You can register now for free at trainingindustry.com. All right, again, Chris, thank you so much for speaking with us, giving a great presentation today. Of course, a thank you goes out to our sponsor class for today's event. And a thank you goes out to all of you for joining us. For now, I'm Sarah Gallo of Training Industry, and I hope you have a great day.